It's time again for Legal Talk on eRadio with myself, Ian, and also Hahn and Hahn attorneys. Today, nice to be joined again by Associate Attorney Isabella Mazzone from the firm. Isabella, hello to you and welcome. It's been a while.
Hi, Ian. It's been about 2 months. When the last time I spoke to you, I think it was like twice in a week or something like that.
Yeah, and now we wait far too long.
Now we had a little break, yeah.
Yeah, listen, just starting off this podcast, I just want to say congratulations to you on your first appearance at the Supreme Court of Appeal this week. I see it was quite an interesting and exciting one, and saw some photos of you on social media. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much, Ian. It really was a really special experience, and we drove down on Sunday. Our matter was heard on Monday morning, and it was really a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Can you tell us quickly before we get into to today's questions, what was it all about?
Sure. So it's actually also a food law related matter. We had one in the High Court. So our client is Clover, and it was with respect to one of their competitors' products, which was which we believe to be non-compliant with the dairy regulations, and also to do with a lot to do with trademarks as well. So there was a bit of IP involved. And then we won in the court of quo in the High Court, and then they proceeded to parole to be heard in the SCA, and they won their parole. So, of course, we then had to appear in front of all 5 judges and, listen to what they have to say. We didn't actually have too much to say, as we weren't the appellants in the matter. We were actually only the respondents. But, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how long it will take for judgment to come out. Judgment's been reserved. But yeah, going to be very, very interesting, especially with it actually has a lot to do with what we'll be speaking about later. Not specifically today, but the new regulations do talk a lot about trademarks, and it will be really interesting to see if this will influence how people interpret the regulations. So it's just it all connects. So it's all interesting for me. I don't know if it's interesting for everybody else, but we'll see.
It is. We're learning something new. That's nice. And we look at packaging differently when we go to the stores. So I think
exactly
that's really nice. But anyway, so staying with the food regulations and the like, what exactly is an FOPL?
Right. So I think the last time, or maybe the time before that, I spoke to you, the new regulations had come out, the draft labeling regulations. And this is where they introduced FOPL, which is front of pack labeling, as one of the brand new provisions that are to affect all of the labels in South Africa. And actually, interestingly enough, subsequent to our conversation, there has now been 4 different versions of this draft, believe it or not. We are now on the 4th version. But just to summarize what it means, they actually define what front of pack labeling is in their first regulation. And they define it as a labeling system, which is outlined in Regulation 51, which I'll get to now, and comprises of a system of logos presented on the principal display panel of a packaging of a foodstuff or a beverage, which is basically the principal field of vision, and an underpinning profiling model relating to nutrients of concern for non-communicable diseases, and presents simple, often graphic information on the nutrient content of nutritional quality of products, to complement the more detailed nutrient declarations usually provided on the back of food packages. So it's a very complicated definition, as you can hear, but we'll simplify it a bit more for you. So there are profiling models in the new regulation, one of which, and the main one being FOPL, which is a system where there will be mandatory front of pack logos placed on the label of a foodstuff when that foodstuff contains added saturated fat, added sugar, added sodium, and it actually exceeds nutrient cutoff values for those nutrients. So in the regulation, they now have nutrient cutoff values for sugar, fatty acids, and sodium. And once your product actually exceeds those values, you then are required by law to then put on these logos if this regulation is actually promulgated. And then interestingly enough, they also apply this to a product that contains any artificial sweeteners. So if your product then is one of the 4 FOPL logos, you have to place it on your label, and it causes a whole lot of issues, which we'll get into a little bit further in terms of how you're able to advertise and market your product. And it's basically a warning system for consumers to see what the product actually contains and whether or not it is in light of the regulation a healthy food product.
Okay, and Isabella, which foods are going to be affected by this?
It's hard to say which foods aren't going to be affected by this, because every foodstuff that is on the shelf right now will have to be evaluated in terms of these nutrient cutoff values. So, like, for example, you have to evaluate the total sugar of a product if it contains added sugar. So if a solid foodstuff contains in excess of 10 grams of sugar per 100 gram, it's then required to have this triangular warning logo. And in the regulation, there are actually, so there's an annexure that contains sort of how these logos will be presented, and it's almost like a stop sign. So it's a triangular warning with an exclamation mark, and indicating which of the nutrients is being warned, and it will be right at the front of pack. And they've actually got percentages of how large it has to be, depending on how many logos you need to have. So if you need to have all 4 logos for a product, let's say your product is, I don't know, for example, a really good example is a packet of chips, where they've added flavorings that contain sugar and maybe artificial sweeteners. And, a packet of chips is by standard, it's got a lot of sodium, it's got a lot of saturated fat.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of products that are going to be affected. And if a product needs all 4 of these logos, it's actually going to take up 25% of the front of pack label. So you're going to see these products on the shelf, and it's going to shout at you that it's not good for you. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, Isabella, do they do this anywhere else in the world, or is it just here in good old South Africa?
Well, we are not too original in this respect. It's actually a Chilean model. So it first happened in Chile in Southern America, and it's been applied now in Peru, in Brazil. There's an Israeli model, there's a Mexican model. So it's actually not just exclusively for South Africa. Obviously, you can see the type of countries that they are sort of isolating it to is third world countries where, there are issues with diabetes and heart disease and those kinds of things. So there is a reason why they want to put this into place. And it's actually been recommended by the WHO. It's all evidence-based. And it's not actually something that they're doing just to spite the manufacturers. It's all because of the science behind of it.
Okay, and WHO, of course, is the World Health Organization. We got to know, we didn't even know they existed before COVID. But
at least some people didn't know.
Yeah. Okay. So, Isabella, what restrictions will they now place on products with FOPL?
Well, there's going to be quite a multitude of restrictions that they place on products that contain FOPL. More importantly, the fact that now products that have FOPL may not be marketed to children. And that's probably one of the biggest restrictions they've now put in place. They've also said that you can't make any claims on these labels. You can't enrich the product, so you can't add in some, here's some vitamin C and some zinc, and there we go. It's a healthy product. You can't do that. You can't have any endorsement logos to say that it reduces the risk of any of the non-communicable diseases. There's quite a few restrictions just in terms of how you can actually label the product and market the product. But I think what they focus on in the regulation, more importantly, is the fact that they may not be advertised or marketed to children. And they actually deal with it in a separate regulation called Regulation 52, where they actually say that these products may not depict or contain any reference to celebrities, sports stars, cartoons, puppets, computer animation, those kinds of things. And they may not contain a competition or a gift or collectible item that appeals to these children. And it may not depict children in mixed groups with young adults older than 18. So even if, these manufacturers try and do an advert where it's, adults with children, that can't be done at all if the product has to contain FOPL. And they have quite an extensive list in this Regulation 52 as to all the things that are prohibited to be done. You can't abuse positive family values in any of the depictions. You can't encourage excessive consumption. But more importantly, they've added in some new things to say that you now cannot depict in any way a brand name of a food requiring an FOPL logo, or a catering establishment that commonly sells foodstuffs requiring FOPL. So who are these? These are fast food restaurants, you know what I'm saying? I mean, all of these products would fall foul of FOPL, and they can now not depict the brand or whatever the case may be, the catering establishment's trade name on clothing, on footwear, or on any other items that are offered for sale or for donation to children. So it's really important now to you sort of think of all of the adverts you see and all of the brands that perhaps sponsor children's sports matches, and these could be brands that sell soft drinks, and soft drinks are really going to be hit by this regulation because almost every soft drink now contains artificial sweeteners. Yeah. Due to our sugar tax. So it's really, really important that manufacturers and businesses have a look at this and comment on this.
Isabella, I can actually see the advertising agencies scratching their heads with how they're going to market these products now without, Well,
they can't.
Yeah.
Not to children, at least.
Yeah, no. It's gonna be a challenge. I'm glad that's not my job.
Yeah, no.
Oh my gosh.
Hahn, we've done, I don't know how many of these workshops and seminars and webinars now. I actually lost count. At one point, it was 15. I'm not sure how many it's been now since the various drafts, but a lot of the companies we've been doing it for have said to us, if this comes into law, please can you speak to our marketing agencies, because we don't want to be the bearer of bad news. Please can you be that person? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not going to be very fun for them to hear about all the things they can't do anymore. Yeah,
I wonder what they're going to do. Well, that's what creativity is all about. They have to come up with something,
Well, the whole idea behind the regulation is that they've put all these restrictions in place so that you'd reformulate your product and so that it doesn't need these warnings, and it's actually a healthier product for consumer. Yeah.
You're right. And Isabella, we don't know how many more drafts we can expect, but when's the deadline? When's the deadline for comments on the draft regulation?
Yeah, so I think the last time I spoke to you, because the first draft was released at the end of January, and then there's a 3-month comment period. And then we thought that the deadline would be the 30th of April. And then I think it was 10 days before the deadline, they released another draft. And that was released on the 14th of April, so a little bit more than 10 days. And next thing we know they republished 2 other versions, except the content was the same. It was just issues with the publications. So as it currently stands, the last publication was on the 21st of April, and therefore the comment period will end on the 21st of July.
Okay, that's still a bit of time left there for
there's a lot of time left. I mean, there are, it's also all available on the Food Focus website. All of the presentations that Hahn has done on this regulation are freely available to anybody to actually go and watch on the Food Focus website.
That's
and
very
there
cool.
it will really give them, it will give them an overview of what to really look out for and what to decide to comment on if they decide to submit comments for their company or their business.
Isabella, as always, a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I know your schedule's been really, really hectic, so we really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for having me again, Ian.
Thank you. You take care and enjoy the rest of your week.
You too. Thanks so much.
Are you or your business in trouble and struggling to find a solution? Call Hahn & Hahn Attorneys as we assist clients in finding solutions. We specialize in consumer and food law, commercial and construction law, forensic investigations and administrative law. Visit hahnlaw.co.za. That's HAHN. We assist clients nationwide. Hahn & Hahn Attorneys, because we care. Don't miss Legal Talk with Hahn & Hahn Attorneys, Wednesday mornings at 10 on eRadio.